Hey Spooniverse, thanks for tuning in to Mixology 101. By now, you know Anthony Caparelli very well, Director of Beverage Studies at the Institute of Culinary Education, and myself, JD, an editor here at Spoon. For the past few weeks, we've been making all of the classic drink, the 6 classic cocktails.
Right, according to David Embury's seminal cocktail book, The Fine Art of Mixing Drinks. So we've done 5 of the 6, and then this is the last one that I think you've been waiting for the whole time.
Yes. Do you guys, so wait, what have we done so far? Tell us. Put it in the comments below if you've been watching. We've done the, I'm a space cadet. We've done the sidecar for one.
Yep.
We've done Manhattans, which is where we're at.
You mean geographically?
Geographically.
I thought you meant like your headspace. No, well, okay, good, that's fine.
I mean, I'm just like a walking Manhattan.
Right, I'm always in a Manhattan.
I'm a tall
headspace.
glass of Manhattan. Terrible puns.
We really have to go drinking
at
some point. Okay, so we got Sidecar Manhattan.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
My favorite Titanic theme, Jack Rose.
Jack Rose, which you keep saying the Jack and Rose, which I love.
Important
it's like
distinction.
Jack and Coke, Jack and Ginger, but Jack Rose is different. Is anyone helping us in the comments?
Let's see. So Sidecar, Manhattan, Jack Rose. Old school, old fashioned.
Old school, old fashioned, and then last week we did.
And then we did, oh, surprise of the year. I thought I hated daiquiris. I thought they were fruity little like blended smoothie things. Turns out they are classy, delicious, crisp, clean cocktails.
Classic sour, right, is what you're looking at.
So, does anyone know what the last 6th drink left is?
I do.
I mean, I do too, because it's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay, should we pull the ingredients out first?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you get the liquids.
Hint,
so I think
there's gin.
We should be able to get it, and if that doesn't do it, that should.
I mean,
so I think we're making martinis.
I mean, I think we have to.
Okay.
If we didn't, it would be a crime.
Right. So for anyone who was thrown by what we put up here, we're using gin and not vodka because that is the classic martini recipe. Gin, it is not a vodka drink.
All the way.
It's a gin drink. So if you haven't had a classic gin martini, please go ahead and make this. It's super, super easy. And please hit us up with questions in the comments because we're doing martinis and I expect a lot of questions on martinis. It's probably the most commonly, I get more questions on martinis than any other drink that I teach. People are fascinated by it. It's considered to be sort of the ultimate drink for bartenders to make.
Like a good one.
Yeah, and there are all different versions, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about martinis out there. So before we make it, why don't we talk a little bit about the different ways that you can serve a martini? Because there's a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I was kind of only half serious about the gin versus vodka thing. We sell way more gin martinis than vodka martinis today. About 5 to 1. I'm sorry, vodka versus gin. We sell way more vodka than gin. About 5 times more vodka martinis than gin. I know it's sad, but that's why we're doing the video. Why do I say that it's sad? I have nothing against vodka. I love vodka. But for those of you who've been following us on Mixology 101, and hopefully will continue till you'll really kind of get to be experts in this stuff, vodka chemically in the bottle is just ethyl alcohol and water. There's no flavoring, there's nothing added by wood, it's literally
pretty bare bones. It's
the chemical ethanol and water. That's what vodka is, and legally that's what vodka has to be. So vodka doesn't add any flavor, it just adds alcohol. Gin
Yum.
Well, okay, but it is what it is. Okay, gin is infused with what botanical primarily?
Am I right when I say juniper?
You are exactly right.
Juniper!
Yes, the name gin comes from the Dutch word Genever, which means juniper.
Blown.
Yeah, and it was shortened from Genever to gin. It literally meant juniper drink. Okay, it actually started as a medicine, believe it or not, because juniper is a digestive aid, and physicians, we think, started infusing juniper into vodka as a way to preserve the berries' medicinal properties so that they could store them and dispense them as a medicine, as opposed to having to keep like closets full of dried juniper berries.
I mean, a lot of people would argue that gin is still a type of medicine.
And absolutely they would argue that, and so it quickly became more popular as a drink than as a medicine. Okay, my point though is that gin has flavor, and in addition to juniper, it has other botanicals in it. It can have things like citrus, it can have grain of paradise, it can have all kinds of stuff in it. So it adds flavor in addition to alcohol. Okay, so when you use use gin in a martini, you're mixing the flavors in the gin with the flavors in the other ingredient, which is what?
Which is dry vermouth.
Dry vermouth, not sweet vermouth.
There's 2 types.
There is 2 types. Dry vermouth. And vermouth, just so that you know, is a fortified wine, which means it's wine that has alcohol added back into it as a preservative. Makes it stronger, fortifies it. Okay, so you can ship it. That's what it was for. And then they also add flavorings to it as well. They add things like bark and things like that also as flavorings, but also as additional preservatives. So vermouth has a lot of flavor. Gin has a lot of flavor. When you mix them together, those flavors work together. You create a recipe. When you make a vodka martini, all you're doing is increasing the alcohol content of the vermouth. You're refortifying it. Yeah. So you're just taking dry vermouth and making it really alcoholic dry vermouth, which doesn't taste very good, which is why people started to then remove the vermouth. And we call that making the martini drier. So big ways you can order martinis. You can do vodka or gin.
Right.
Either way, you can then have a regular martini, sometimes called a wet martini. You can have a dry martini, which you just put a splash of vermouth in. Again, because it's super alcoholic vermouth. Or you can have an extra dry martini, which is no vermouth at all.
Oh.
So if you're drinking an extra dry vodka martini, you're literally just drinking ethyl alcohol and water in a glass. That's
hardcore, but to each their own.
And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't think they like martinis, because there's no recipe involved there. It's a chemical and water and chilled, and then you throw some olives in it. Okay, so what we did to fix that, we started with gin and vermouth. Four parts to 1. 4 parts gin to 1 part dry vermouth. That's like the classic 1950s style. And then the olive adds a little bit of salt, which just brings out the flavor. Beautiful drink. Then we started substituting vodka, which didn't taste very good, so we started removing vermouth. So over about 50 to 60 years, we took systematically all of the flavor out of the martini, and we're left with a glass of ethyl alcohol and water. That didn't taste like anything.
Yeah.
And then we immediately took the most popular flavoring ingredient on the planet, which is salt, in the form of olive brine, and dumped it back in, and that's where the dirty martini came from. So we took 50 years to pull the flavor out, and then we added salt. So this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of dirty martinis. I'll make them all day long. That's totally fine. But a dirty martini is literally ethyl alcohol, water, and olive brine. And that's fine, but it has nothing to do with a classic gin martini, which is what we're going to make.
I do really like them, though.
Okay? So just keep that in mind. If you drink dirty martinis, please enjoy them responsibly. But do try an actual classic martini, again, like we're going to make today, because there's a recipe going on there. That's the point.
Yeah.
All right?
Let's
a couple of other things. So I'll make one, and then we'll talk about a couple of other modifications you can do to the martini. I'm going to do a classic shaken gin martini. And what I'm going to start with is, again, as always, my tin with ice. And I'm going to use 2 ounces of gin, and I like to use a London dry gin. That means a bunch of things, but the most important thing it means is that juniper is the primary botanical.
Okay.
We have a lot of American, because that's the regulations, we have a lot of American gins on the market now, and we don't follow the same regulations. So American gin doesn't necessarily have juniper as the primary botanical.
Okay.
Most of them do,
that makes sense.
but
Like
it doesn't
how
have to.
you can only call champagne champagne if it's from Champagne, France, but we make Prosecco all over the place in America.
Very good. So now we're going to do 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. And you've seen me do this a lot. I'm going to shake it, just a little push and twist to lock. One hand on the bottom, one hand on the top. And shake it until I get frost on the tin. Now the other thing that's really important when you're making a martini, you have to shake the drink a lot because you're diluting. The only thing in here is gin and dry vermouth. There's no mixer.
That's some serious liquor.
Right. Water is the mixer. So another reason people might not like martinis is because they're not properly shaken or stirred, which we'll talk about. All right. So I'm going to do this.
Are you guys good? If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments below, and we've got to.
So this, again, this is the love. This is where you show your guests how much you are happy for them to be in your bar or in your apartment or house or whatever. New York apartment.
The guns.
And the guns.
She doesn't like a little workout.
And now we're going to strain this into my martini glass. So, a couple things I want to point out. When people say shaken versus stirred, one of the things that you're looking for here is you can see in a shaken drink, it's cloudy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Those bubbles are air bubbles, and they contain a lot of flavor. When they burst in your mouth, they drive that flavor up into your nose, which actually does most of the tasting. And so the drink tastes a little bit more intensely than if it was completely flat, stirred. But people don't always like that bubbly presentation, especially in dark spirits, which is one of the reasons why people say you can't shake Manhattans. Baloney, you absolutely can. I argue with bartenders all day long about this. It's your choice or the guest's choice, but you will end up with a cloudy drink, and it will settle, that's fine. The other thing is, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a nice layer of ice over the top. And when we serve a drink up, which means no rocks, no ice, that layer of ice will keep the drink colder longer. I enjoy that. Yeah. So I prefer all of my drinks, dark or light, shaken for those reasons. If you don't, that's fine, but don't tell people they're doing anything wrong. It's like saying you can't boil chicken, which we talked about before. Yes, you can. Just not if you're trying to make fried chicken. Okay. So the last thing we need to make this a classic martini is some cocktail olives on a pick. Again, I prefer longer picks so that they don't do what this is going to do, which is drop right into the drink. But at least I can get the olives out without sticking my finger in the drink. Okay.
So about the olive, the issue asked, what do the olives do to a martini? Does it enhance the flavor profile?
Beautiful question. So yes. So the two things olives do, one, they make it look really pretty because I like that. Otherwise, it's just a clear drink. Okay. The other thing is that they add, we mentioned salt, but very little amounts of salt. So salt, for the chefs out there, you know, salt used in very, very small amounts enhances flavor. Salt used too much, will mask flavor. So when you just put just the brine, which is the salt that the olives are cured in, that's clinging to the olives, and you put that in the martini, it just adds enough salt to bring the flavor of the gin and the vermouth out. If you put a ½ ounce of olive brine in the drink by making a dirty martini, you're masking all of the flavor. But again, most dirty martinis are made with vodka and little or no vermouth. So there is no flavor to mask. The salt is the flavor.
That makes sense, because when you do picklebacks, you're trying to get rid of the intense shot you just did.
What a perfect analogy. That is exactly right. So and they do add a little bit of the savory flavor of the olive, because there's some olive oil in there that's dissolved by the alcohol, by the ethyl alcohol, and that adds a little bit of a savory component. And again, that works really well with the botanicals in the gin, and especially the flavorings in the dry vermouth. Savory works really well. Not so much if it's just vodka by itself chilled. Okay, so great question. So
can I try this?
Absolutely. I would love for you to try that.
I've just been waiting. Yeah, that is a clean martini.
And you can enjoy that.
I can drink this all day, every day.
Good. So why don't you make one, and then I want to talk a little bit more about this so that the Spooniverse viewers are martini masters. The other important thing I want you to see is how much I filled that drink. It is not filled to the top. I always have
That's just an accident waiting to happen if it's all the way up there.
Yeah, at least a ½ inch, maybe an inch. So first of all, it will spill all over the place, but because of the nature of a cone, believe it or not, most of the volume of the drink is still in this unfilled portion of the glass. So by topping this up, you almost double the volume. It's insane. You can try this at home, but that's actually true. So you end up over-serving your guests or getting way too intoxicated yourself too early. So please don't ask your bartenders to fill up the martinis. If your bartenders, educate your guests. This is the way the glass was designed to be filled, and this is a responsible way to drink martinis. Okay.
Moderation is key.
That for the end of the sermon.
Moderation's major key.
I like my guests to be able to come back happy and healthy.
Okay, so here's my question for you. We've been using the little jigga to do that. I have never poured.
I'm going to teach you how to do that.
So how do I know what I'm doing?
So first thing I want you to do is you're going to take that pour spout and face it directly away from you. Okay. You're going to take your finger and make it into a gun and lay it right next to the pour spout.
Oh,
there you go. Now this joint should be right next to the pour spout. Yeah, and then just, there you go, just like that, and then just grab the bottle.
Okay, and then just grab the bottle and do a little.
So with the one hand, you're going to turn it, but I want you to turn it so that the bottle is actually at about this angle, so that the pour spout here is straight down. And then you're going to count to 4. I'll count with you, and that's going to be 2 ounces, because each
Let's all count together!
Is 1/2 ounce. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful.
Wow, that was easy.
Now, I'm going to have you do some math. Is that okay?
I don't know. Okay, I'm making a sweat.
So if each count is a 1/2 ounce, and I want a 1/2 ounce of vermouth, what's your count going to be?
1. Yes!
Not even complicated math. So give me a 1.
That's for you, calculus teacher in high school. Sorry, I don't remember.
All right, give me a 1 count. And literally it's just going to be 1 and out. Just boom.
Boom and out.
Yeah, and you got some over here, so give me a little bit more. Whoop. Good, perfect. Fantastic. Now you know how to do the rest of this. You're going to shake it and strain it.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, gotta lock it in
Lock
place,
it in,
a little
twist
to
it.
the side.
Good.
Twist.
We never hit the glass.
Never hit it. Don't want it to smack.
And now, this is my favorite part of shooting these videos with you.
Because you can like add a little footwork in, get really fancy with it.
So a couple of other things you can do in addition to serving your martini up in a cocktail or martini glass, you can serve it on the rocks. And you can also change the garnish. So in addition to olives, a very classic martini garnish is a lemon peel. So when you're asking your guests, how's that feeling? Good?
It feels cold.
Good, so you're good. When you're asking your guests what they want in their martini, the very first thing you have to ask is vodka or gin. That's just the reality of it. Then you want to ask them up or on the rocks. You want to ask them how dry they want it. And then my favorite, this is a famous little quote in the restaurant industry, olive or twist is an easy way to remember that. Do you want olives or a twist? All right, and if you, and then obviously shaken or stirred is another preference they may have. So there's about 5 questions you have to ask the guest in order to make the martini the way that they want it. And if people don't know the answers, don't make them feel bad. Just suggest, I prefer my martini shaken, like I just told you. And that's how I would recommend you try it. Look at that. That is a gorgeous drink.
You got, it's like there's a layer of like glaciers on top.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I wish you guys could get a little bit. I'm going to see what I can do here. But those ice chips on top, that's how I know that my bartender actually put the work into the martini that I... And the other thing it does is make sure
yes, I did.
It's at the right temperature. So this martini should be significantly below 32 degrees Fahrenheit because the ethyl alcohol lets it get that low. Which means for about 15 minutes, it's still going to be below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is my metric. That's what we keep beer at. That's the temperature I like my drinks. Okay, so
like you don't want your drink to get too warm, kind of like the planet's glaciers are melting because of climate change.
Cocktail warming is one of the most serious threats facing us at this time. That's fabulous.
It's a huge problem.
That is really, really great.
Oh, yay!
Good. So you're getting all of the idea about the flavors in the martini?
Absolutely.
Good.
It's delicious.
And then you can go ahead and play with the dryness. If we were to do a dry martini, believe it or not, all you do is in your mixing tin or your glass, rather, if this was the martini glass, you literally just do a splash, swirl it around to coat the glass, and dump it out. This would be the martini glass now, and then I would pour the martini into the glass, and just what's coating the glass, that's the amount of vermouth. Now, it's not very much, but again, it's, you know, so that's called a dry martini. Extra dry is no vermouth at all.
It's a delicate, delicate procedure.
Yes.
Now, I have a gift for you for teaching me how to make so many amazing, fantastic cocktails.
I don't know what to say. I didn't get you anything.
Before we move on to eggs, I got one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you explain what dry vermouth is?
Yeah, great. So vermouth comes in 2 different styles, sweet vermouth and dry vermouth. Why don't you grab the bottle of sweet vermouth over there? So sweet vermouth, they're very similar. They're both fortified wines. Sweet vermouth generally has caramel added to it for sweetness and color. So you can see, and this is what we use in dark spirit drinks like Manhattans, and we did use this in the Manhattan. So you can see the difference in color between these, and that color carries with it sweetness. So this is going to add sweetness to a drink, and we generally are not going to use it with white spirits. And then this adds just the dry vermouth flavor of the barks and the botanicals that are in the dry vermouth. Okay, and it works a little bit better. Again, a lot of thought was put into this. Gin and dry vermouth, when you taste them together, the flavors work very, very well. Gin and sweet vermouth, the sweet vermouth overpowers the gin to the point where you can't taste the gin anymore. Great question. I love it. Okay. So you were giving me a gift.
So my gift to you is that I'm much better at making food than I am drinks. Although I'm getting there, thanks to you.
Getting pretty good at drinks.
So I made my aunt's, it's a drink-inspired deviled egg. Okay. Bloody Mary deviled eggs.
Now, do you know did you know that deviled eggs are my absolute favorite appetizer in the world?
No! What?
Absolutely favorite. I've been staring at these.
I had no idea.
Trying to not eat them the whole time. Okay.
Well, please do.
And tell me again what's in it?
So, there isn't any vodka, unfortunately. Or tequila if you like Bloody Marias like I do.
Okay.
So it's Bloody Mary mix, and a little bit of horseradish, some dried mustard instead of wet mustard, salt, pepper, paprika. Call it a day. Boom.
I'm going to go ahead and...
Oh, that's a little, it's a little chopped up celery leaf on top.
That looks amazing.
If you were wondering what the green garnish was. Because what kind of a cocktail party could you have without appetizers?
That's incredible.
Yeah!
That's okay. So you know what I would do with this?
Yes.
I would take one of these. I would make a beautiful Bloody Mary, which we should do.
Yes.
We'll do a Bloody Mary. We'll talk all about the history of Bloody Mary. It's amazing. And then just as a garnish, just sit this right on top. It would be with maybe like
That's even better.
pick through it in some
yeah.
pepperoni and cheese kind of up on.
A little stick of bacon in there. I don't know.
That's phenomenal.
Well, this is thank you.
No, thank you.
Well, before we can end,
Yeah.
we have to like steer our people in the right direction. Are London gins labeled as such, or are there certain brands that you can recommend?
God, you guys ask the best questions, honestly. This is why I love doing videos for you guys. Yes. So London gin by law is going to be labeled London gin. London dry gin. If it's not labeled London dry gin, then it's not. You can't label it London dry unless it follows the requirements. And in addition to being juniper forward, there's a couple of more technical things which you can look up on the web. But the big one has to do with whether or not the botanicals are actually in the still. It's present at the time of distillation is the words that they use. So you can either make gin by distilling the base spirit, call it vodka, through the botanicals. So the steam extracts the oils from the botanicals, the alcohol vapor, or you can just add the oils later.
Okay.
You can make the oils themselves and then add them later. In order to be called London Dry Gin, the vodka, the ethyl alcohol vapor has to do the extracting. You can't add the oils later. But we have some beautiful gins out there that are not London Dry that are also juniper forward. But you know when you buy a London Dry gin that you are getting a juniper forward drink. The primary botanical note has to be juniper.
The London Dry stamp of approval.
Yes, absolutely.
Too cool for school.
Cool?
All right.
All right.
Well.
So I think we're going to take next week off for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And then...
we'll see you after.
And I think we got a good drink coming up after that.
Oh, yeah, we do.
You want to tune in for this one. Can we tease it? All right, we're going to do my famous, at least no people who know me, we're going to do my famous bourbon eggnog, Maker's Mark eggnog, fresh from scratch. It's going to take a little while, but it is the best eggnog that I've ever had. And if you haven't tried fresh eggnog, please tune in. You're going to love this, and you'll be the hit of your holiday party.
So excited.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers.